The morning air had a sharp bite to it as Anya clutched her worn jacket closer to her body. Fall was settling in across the city, painting the trees in fiery colors and bringing that familiar chill that cut through thin fabric. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to stay warm as she waited at the bus stop on Cedar Street. The same bus stop she'd been coming to for the past 3 years. Anya checked her watch. Still 15 minutes until her bus would arrive. 15 minutes of staring at that piano. The city had installed the upright piano about a month ago as part of some arts program. Music for Everyone was painted in bright yellow letters across its side. Most days it just sat there collecting dust and occasional raindrops, despite the protective overhang. Sometimes a child would bang randomly on the keys while their parent tried to pull them away. Once a teenager played what sounded like the beginning of a pop song, before his friends laughed and he stopped, embarrassed. But mostly it was just a strange piece of furniture that the morning commuters pretended not to see. Anya's fingers twitched at her side as she stared at it. Those keys. She knew exactly how they would feel beneath her fingertips, cool at first, then warming to her touch. She knew how the middle C would sound slightly flat, because public pianos were never perfectly tuned. She knew because once upon a time pianos had been her entire world. "You're looking at that thing like it might bite you," said a friendly voice. Anya turned to see Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who owned the flower shop down the block. They often waited for the bus together, exchanging small talk about the weather or Mrs. Chen's grandchildren. "Oh, I was just wondering who thought putting a piano at a bus stop was a good idea," Anya said with a small laugh, tucking her hands into her pockets. "You play?" Mrs. Chen asked, her eyes brightening with interest. Anya hesitated, something she always did when people asked about music. "I used to, a long time ago." "Why stop something you love?" Mrs. Chen asked with the directness of someone who had lived long enough not to waste time on social niceties. The simple question hit Anya like a physical blow. Why had she stopped? The complicated answer involved conservatory tuition bills piling up, her grandmother's illness, 3 jobs that barely covered the rent, and eventually, a cleaning position at the Riverdale office park that paid just enough to survive but demanded early mornings and late evenings. There was also the matter of her small apartment with thin walls and neighbors who worked night shifts and needed to sleep during the day. But the real answer was simpler and more painful. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped believing she deserved to play. "Life happened," Anya finally said with a shrug, adjusting her backpack. Inside were her lunch, a water bottle, and buried at the bottom, a folder of sheet music she couldn't bring herself to throw away despite not having touched a piano in nearly 2 years. Mrs. Chen made a disapproving noise in her throat but didn't press further. The morning crowd was growing now, people with coffee cups and headphones creating that familiar wall of disconnected humanity. A businessman in an expensive-looking suit checked his watch impatiently, as though the gesture might magically make the bus appear. A group of high school students huddled together, sharing a video on someone's phone. 2 construction workers talked quietly about a project they were working on downtown. Everyone wrapped in their own separate worlds. Anya's gaze drifted back to the piano. The sun had broken through the clouds and a beam of light fell across the keys like a spotlight. She remembered her grandmother's small living room where an old upright piano had taken up nearly an entire wall. How her grandmother had saved for years to buy it secondhand, determined that her granddaughter would have the opportunities she never had. "Music lives in you," her grandmother had told her countless times. "No one can take it away unless you let them." Anya had been 12 when she gave her first recital, 16 when she won her first competition, 18 when she received the scholarship to the conservatory. Music had been as natural to her as breathing. On stage, her usual shyness fell away, replaced by a confidence that came from knowing exactly where she belonged in the world. Then came her grandmother's stroke. The medical bills. The impossible choice between tuition payments and hospital care. There had never really been a choice at all. The day Anya had sold her piano was the day a piece of her soul went quiet. A young father approached the bus stop, holding his daughter's hand. The little girl, no more than 5, broke free from his grip and ran straight to the piano. "Can I play it, Daddy? Please?" she begged, already reaching for the keys. "Honey, people are waiting for the bus. They don't want to hear noise this early," the father said gently, trying to steer her away. "It's not noise. It's music," the little girl protested, her bottom lip trembling. Something stirred in Anya's chest at the child's words. Not noise. Music. For 2 years, she had been surviving but not living. Walking through life with the volume turned down. Taking the same bus, cleaning the same offices, returning to an apartment that never quite felt like home. She had blamed circumstances, bad luck, the unfairness of a world that made pursuing art a luxury rather than a necessity. But standing there watching the little girl reluctantly step away from the piano, Anya suddenly understood that the person who had taken music away from her wasn't the bill collector or the landlord or even life itself. It was her. The realization left her breathless, as though she'd been running and finally stopped to look around and see where she was. The bus was now only 5 minutes away, according to the electronic sign. Commuters began to position themselves closer to the curb, preparing for its arrival. Mrs. Chen had struck up a conversation with another regular, a nurse heading to the hospital for her shift. Anya stood frozen, caught between the habit of years and the sudden wild thought that had taken hold of her mind. The piano was right there, just a few steps away. What would happen if she just played, just for a minute before the bus came? Her heart began to pound. People would stare. They would judge. What business did a cleaning lady in worn jeans and scuffed boots have with a piano meant for real musicians? But then again, wasn't she a real musician? Hadn't she spent thousands of hours practicing, learning, performing? Didn't music still live in her even after all this time? The morning breeze picked up, sending a few fallen leaves skittering across the sidewalk. One of them, bright red and perfectly preserved, landed right at the base of the piano like an invitation. Before she could talk herself out of it, Anya took a step toward the piano, then another. Her legs felt wooden, her breath shallow. She set her backpack down and slid onto the bench. Its wooden surface cool through her jeans. No one seemed to notice her at first, too absorbed in their phones or conversations. Mrs. Chen glanced over and gave a surprised smile, but didn't say anything. Anya placed her hands on the keys, feeling their smooth, familiar surface. Her fingers found their positions as naturally as if she'd played yesterday instead of years ago. For a long moment she just sat there, feeling the weight of the keys beneath her fingers, remembering. The conservatory practice rooms, the competitions, her grandmother's proud smile as she played the Chopin nocturne at her recital. A simple melody came to her mind, the first piece she had ever mastered as a child. Nothing fancy or technical, just a beautiful tune that had always made her feel at peace. She pressed down gently on the first key, and music, not noise, floated out into the morning air. The sound startled her, like hearing her own voice after being silent for years. The piano was indeed a bit out of tune, but in a way that gave it character rather than making it unpleasant. Anya played the first few measures tentatively, her fingers remembering what her mind had tried to forget. The simple melody felt like coming home after a long journey. She didn't notice that a few heads had turned in her direction, curious about the unexpected sound at their daily bus stop. She didn't see the little girl tugging on her father's sleeve, pointing excitedly. She didn't notice the businessman pausing his phone conversation mid-sentence. For that brief moment, there was only Anya and the music, old friends reuniting after a painful separation. As she reached the end of the piece, she felt something unlock inside her chest, a door opening to a room she had kept sealed for too long. The final note hung in the air just as the rumble of the approaching bus broke the spell. Reality rushed back in. Anya quickly stood up, suddenly aware of the eyes on her, feeling exposed and vulnerable. She grabbed her backpack and moved toward the curb with the others, her cheeks burning. Had she really just done that? Played a piano in public after all this time? As the bus doors opened, Mrs. Chen leaned close and whispered, "Tomorrow, play something longer." That was beautiful. Anya stepped onto the bus, her mind reeling. Her hands were trembling, but not from the cold. For the first time in years, she felt fully awake, as if she had been sleepwalking through life until this moment. Maybe tomorrow she would play again. Maybe something a little more challenging, maybe. As the bus pulled away from the stop, she caught a glimpse of the piano through the window, standing patient and waiting in the morning light. The next morning arrived with a steady drizzle that turned the world gray. Anya stood under her small umbrella at the bus stop, watching raindrops bounce off the closed lid of the piano. The protective overhang wasn't quite large enough, and water dripped down one side of the instrument. She'd barely slept last night. After years of silence, those few moments of playing had awakened something inside her that refused to go back to sleep. All through her shift cleaning offices, her fingers had tapped out rhythms on mop handles and desk edges. Old melodies had floated through her mind, clearer than they had been in years. Today, the bus stop was more crowded than usual. Bad weather always meant fewer people walked and more took public transportation. Anya spotted Mrs. Chen already waiting, sharing an umbrella with another regular, a young man who worked at the coffee shop down the street. The little girl from yesterday wasn't there, but several unfamiliar faces had joined the usual crowd, probably seeking shelter from the rain. "Good morning," Mrs. Chen called out with a knowing smile. "Will we have music today?" Anya felt her cheeks flush. "I don't think so. Not in this weather." But even as she said it, she found herself moving closer to the piano, as if drawn by an invisible thread. She ran her fingers over the closed lid, wiping away some of the raindrops that had collected there. "You played yesterday?" asked a woman Anya hadn't seen before. She had kind eyes and a colorful scarf wrapped around her neck. "Just a little," Anya admitted, surprised to be noticed. "It was lovely," the woman said. "I was just getting off the number 16 bus when I heard it. Made my whole morning better." A warm feeling spread through Anya's chest at the unexpected compliment. Maybe playing in public wasn't so scary after all. She glanced at her watch. Still 12 minutes until her bus arrived. Plenty of time for a short piece. Before she could change her mind, she gently lifted the lid and wiped the keys dry with her sleeve. The bench was damp, but her work pants were thick enough that it didn't matter much. She set her umbrella against the side of the piano, took a deep breath, and sat down. What should she play? Something a bit more challenging than yesterday, but still accessible. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before finding the opening notes of Beethoven's Für Elise. Not the most original choice, perhaps, but a piece that had always felt like a good friend. As the familiar melody began to flow, Anya felt yesterday's nervousness melt away. The rain created a gentle backdrop to the music, and the small crowd at the bus stop seemed to shift and turn toward the unexpected concert. She was halfway through the piece when she heard it, a loud, deliberate laugh. Anya's fingers faltered but didn't stop as she glanced up. A man in an expensive gray suit stood at the edge of the bus shelter, his umbrella dripping beside him. Everything about him screamed money and importance, from his polished shoes to his designer watch. He was looking directly at her with an expression of amused contempt. "Is this really necessary?" he asked loudly, not to Anya but to the crowd in general. "Some of us are trying to have a peaceful morning commute." Anya's fingers slowed but didn't quite stop. She'd dealt with rudeness during her years as a cleaning lady. People who acted like she was invisible, who left messes they'd never make at home, who spoke about her as if she couldn't hear them. Usually she let it roll off her back, but this felt different, more personal somehow. "I think it sounds nice," Mrs. Chen said firmly, giving the man a stern look. The man raised an eyebrow. "It sounds like someone who should be practicing at home, not inflicting their hobby on tired commuters." He checked his expensive watch with an exaggerated gesture. "Some of us have important meetings to get to." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. One or two nodded in agreement with the man. Another person laughed, a short, nervous sound that seemed to say they were on the important man's side. Anya's hands froze on the keys. The warm feeling from earlier curdled into something cold and heavy in her stomach. Who did she think she was, anyway? A cleaning lady pretending to be a concert pianist at a bus stop? Maybe the man was right, this was silly and self-indulgent. She started to close the lid, her face burning with embarrassment. "Don't stop," said a quiet voice. It was the woman with the colorful scarf. "Please," but Anya couldn't continue. Not with the businessman staring at her like she was something unpleasant he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. Not with other people in the crowd exchanging glances and whispers. She gently lowered the piano lid and moved back to stand near the street, keeping her eyes fixed on the wet pavement. The businessman gave a satisfied nod, as if he'd done everyone a favor. He pulled out his phone and began talking loudly about stock options and quarterly projections. "You shouldn't have stopped," Mrs. Chen said quietly, moving to stand beside Anya. "That man is a fool." "It's fine," Anya mumbled, though it wasn't fine at all. "The bus will be here soon anyway." But the bus was running late due to the rain. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The crowd at the stop grew larger, people huddling under the shelter, checking their phones, sighing impatiently. The businessman continued his loud phone conversation, pacing back and forth like he owned the small space. Anya felt herself shrinking, trying to become invisible, a skill she'd perfected over the years. But something else was happening too beneath the embarrassment and shame. A slow burn of anger. Who was this man to decide who got to make music and who didn't? Who was he to laugh at something that had once been the center of her world? He knew nothing about her. About the years of practice, the competitions, the sacrifices her grandmother had made. The memory of her grandmother rose sharp and clear in her mind. Grandma V had been barely 5 feet tall, but she'd been fierce when it came to standing up for herself and others. "No one can make you feel small unless you let them," she used to say. "And baby, you're too talented to be small." The businessman finally ended his call and turned his attention to a woman standing nearby. "This neighborhood used to have standards," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Now they put pianos at bus stops for any random person to bang on." He glanced dismissively at Anya. "Stick to your day job, honey." A few people looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. The rain drummed steadily on the shelter roof. Anya's hands curled into fists inside her jacket pockets. Her day job. Cleaning up after people like him who left coffee cups on bathroom sinks and tracked mud across freshly mopped floors without ever looking up from their phones. People who probably couldn't even make their own beds but felt entitled to judge her. The anger grew hotter, pushing against the weight of embarrassment. "The piano is for everyone," the woman with the colorful scarf finally said. "That's why it says music for everyone on the side." The businessman rolled his eyes. "There's a difference between music and whatever that was." "It was Beethoven," Mrs. Chen said sharply. "Perhaps you've heard of him? Or is classical music too common for your refined tastes?" The man's face flushed slightly. He hadn't expected pushback from a small elderly woman. "I know Beethoven," he snapped. "I have season tickets to the symphony. That's where music belongs, in a concert hall performed by professionals. Not at a bus stop by—" He waved his hand vaguely in Anya's direction, "by a nobody." He didn't say it, but the meaning was clear. Anya felt something shift inside her. A nobody. Was that really all she was? A cleaning lady who had once been something more, who now existed on the edges of other people's lives. The number 42 bus appeared at the end of the street, its headlights cutting through the rain. Anya looked at the piano, then at the approaching bus. She had a choice to make. She could get on that bus like she did every day, go to her job, and forget this embarrassing incident. She could stay small and safe, letting people like this man define who she was and what she deserved. Or she could do something else. Before she could second-guess herself, Anya stepped away from the curb. "You go ahead," she told Mrs. Chen. "I think I'm going to catch the next one." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled with understanding. She patted Anya's arm. "I'll see you tomorrow then." The bus pulled up with a squeal of brakes and a splash of rainwater. The crowd began to move forward, umbrellas bobbing, shoulders hunched against the weather. The businessman moved toward the bus doors, still muttering about falling standards and public nuisances. He shot one last dismissive glance at Anya before stepping aboard. Anya stood very still, watching as Mrs. Chen, the woman with the colorful scarf, and most of the other regulars boarded. A few unfamiliar faces remained, probably waiting for different routes. The rain was coming down harder now. The bus pulled away with a hiss of tires on wet pavement, leaving a strange silence behind. Anya turned and walked back to the piano. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, but her hands were steady as she lifted the lid once more. Water had collected on the keys again, and she carefully wiped each one dry. She would be late for work. She might even lose her job. But in this moment, those concerns seemed far away and unimportant. Anya sat down on the damp bench, closed her eyes and placed her fingers on the keys. This time, she wouldn't play something simple or familiar. This time, she would play what she felt. The rain fell steadily around the bus shelter, creating a wall of water that seemed to cut Anya off from the rest of the world. The few people who remained at the stop after her bus pulled away stood at a distance, watching her curiously. Anya took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Her hands hovered above the keys as memories flooded back. Her first recital, her grandmother's proud smile, the standing ovation at the conservatory's winter showcase. For years, She had locked these memories away because they hurt too much. Now she welcomed them like old friends. What should she play? Not another simple piece. Not something safe and familiar that anyone with basic training could manage. No, she needed to play something that expressed everything she was feeling in this moment. The anger, the hurt, the longing, and beneath it all, a spark of something that felt dangerously like hope. Her fingers found their position without her having to think about it. The opening notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the air, powerful, emotional, and unmistakably difficult. It was the last piece she had performed before life forced her to give up her dreams, and her fingers remembered every note. The music poured out of her like a river breaking through a dam. All the emotions she had suppressed for years flowed through her hands and into the piano. She forgot about the rain, the bus stop, the businessman's mockery. She forgot about being late for work and the possibility of losing her job. There was only the music, complex, demanding, and achingly beautiful. A young man passing by slowed, then stopped, his umbrella tilting as he forgot to hold it straight. An older couple sheltering in a nearby doorway moved closer, drawn by the unexpected sound. Even the few remaining people at the bus stop who had been checking their phones looked up in surprise. Anya didn't notice any of this. Her eyes were closed, her body swaying slightly as she lost herself in the piece. The old upright piano wasn't a concert grand, and it was far from perfectly tuned, but under her hands, it sang with a voice that carried above the sound of the falling rain. As she moved into the second movement, slower and more contemplative, she felt tears mixing with the raindrops on her face. How had she survived so long without this? It was like denying herself air or water or sunlight. Music wasn't just something she did. It was part of who she was. More people had gathered now. Someone had stepped under the bus shelter and was recording her with a phone. Others stood in the rain, umbrellas forgotten at their sides. A city bus pulled up, but no one moved to board it. The driver, curious about the crowd, opened his doors and listened for a moment before shaking his head in amazement. A woman in nurse's scrubs whispered to the person beside her, "Is she famous? Should I know who she is?" The man beside her shrugged, his eyes never leaving Anya's hands as they moved across the keys with practiced precision. "I don't know, but she's incredible." Anya reached the third movement, her fingers flying over the keys in a blur of motion. This was the part that had always challenged her most, the part that separated skilled pianists from truly exceptional ones. She had practiced these passages for countless hours, working until her hands cramped and her teacher begged her to take a break. Now, despite years without practice, her muscle memory took over. Her fingers found each note, each chord, each rapid run with a certainty that surprised even her. This wasn't just about proving something to the rude businessman or the strangers at the bus stop. This was about reclaiming a part of herself she had nearly lost forever. As she neared the climax of the piece, Anya finally opened her eyes. The sight that greeted her nearly made her stumble over the keys. At least 30 people stood watching her, their faces rapt with attention. More were approaching from down the street, drawn by the unexpected concert in this unlikely venue. For a brief, terrifying moment, stage fright threatened to overwhelm her. These weren't her fellow students or music lovers who had paid for concert tickets. These were strangers caught in an ordinary moment of their day who had stumbled upon something extraordinary. But the fear passed quickly. The music carried her forward, and Anya surrendered to it completely. Let them watch. Let them judge. Let them wonder who this woman in worn clothes was, and how she could create such beauty with just her hands and an old piano. As she played the final triumphant chords, the crowd burst into applause that seemed to surround her from all sides. Someone cheered. Someone else whistled. A woman in the front wiped tears from her eyes. Anya sat still for a moment, her hands resting on the keys, her breath coming in quick gasps. She felt lightheaded, as if she might float away if she stood up too quickly. Had that really just happened? Had she really just performed Rachmaninoff at a bus stop in the rain? A young woman pushed forward through the crowd, her phone still recording. That was amazing. Are you a professional pianist? Do you perform somewhere locally? Before Anya could answer, more questions came from different directions. Where did you study? Do you teach? What's your name? Do you have a YouTube channel? Anya rose from the bench on shaky legs. She began, but wasn't sure how to continue. What was she? A failed music student? A cleaning lady? A woman who had just rediscovered the most essential part of herself? She's a pianist. said a familiar voice. Mrs. Chen was pushing her way back through the crowd, having apparently gotten off the bus when it returned on its route. Her eyes were bright with pride, as if Anya were her own granddaughter. A real one. Anya felt her eyes fill with tears. A real pianist. Yes, that's what she was. What she had always been, even during the years when she hadn't touched a keyboard. The music had always been inside her, waiting. The woman with the recording phone was still talking excitedly. "I'm going to post this online if that's okay. People need to see this. It's like one of those videos where someone plays in a train station and turns out to be a famous concert pianist." "I'm not famous," Anya said quickly. "Really, I'm just—" "You should be," said an older man near the front of the crowd. He had the look of someone who knew music, perhaps a teacher or a performer himself. That was a professional-level performance of an extremely difficult piece. The crowd murmured in agreement. More phones were out now, some taking photos, others recording video. Anya felt overwhelmed by the attention, but also strangely validated. For years, she had carried her musical training like a secret, something that belonged to a different life, a different version of herself. Now that secret was out, exposed to the light of day and the eyes of strangers. A city maintenance worker who had stopped to listen shook his head in amazement. "I've been watching these public pianos since they installed them. Lots of people play chopsticks or heart and soul. Nobody's ever played like that." Another bus approached, and a few people reluctantly moved toward the curb, clearly torn between their daily responsibilities and the unexpected moment they had just witnessed. Others made no move to leave, seemingly content to be late for whatever awaited them. The rain had lightened to a gentle drizzle, and a patch of blue sky was visible in the distance. Anya glanced at her watch and realized with a shock that she was already 30 minutes late for work. Mr. Patterson, the building manager, had warned her twice about tardiness. This would likely be her third and final strike. Strangely, the thought didn't upset her as much as it should have. Something fundamental had shifted inside her during that performance. She wasn't sure what came next, but she knew she couldn't go back to the life she'd been living. Not completely, not anymore. "I have to go," she said, gathering her belongings. "I'm late for work. Where do you work?" someone asked. "Are you a music teacher?" Anya hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I clean offices in the Riverdale building." There was a moment of surprised silence, as if the crowd couldn't reconcile the woman who had just played Rachmaninoff with the woman who mopped floors and emptied trash cans. "Well," said the older man who had spoken earlier, "I suspect you might have other options soon." He handed her a business card. "I teach at the community music school on Elm Street. We're always looking for talented instructors, and we have practice rooms you could use. Come see me when you're ready." Anya took the card with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. As she pushed gently through the crowd, people patted her shoulder, shook her hand, and murmured words of praise and encouragement. The woman with the phone called after her. "I'm posting this tonight. What's your name?" "People will want to know." "Anya," she said after a moment's hesitation. "Just Anya." She hurried down the street toward her job, her mind racing faster than her feet. She might be fired today. She might have to search for new work. But for the first time in years, those worries seemed manageable, even small, because something had awakened inside her. Something that had been sleeping, but never truly gone. And now that it was awake, Anya knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same again. Behind her, she could hear someone already starting to play the piano. Hesitantly, simple notes perhaps inspired by what they had just witnessed. The thought made her smile through her tears. Music for everyone. Indeed. Anya rushed through the lobby of the Riverdale office building, her hair still damp from the rain, her heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. She was nearly an hour late now. Mr. Patterson would be waiting, arms crossed and face set in that familiar look of disappointment. She clocked in at 9:53 a.m. Her shift was supposed to start at 9:00. As she hurried to the supply closet to grab her cleaning cart, she tried to come up with a believable excuse. Bus broke down? Family emergency? The truth seemed too strange to share. Mr. Patterson was waiting for her by the elevators, clipboard in hand and a deep frown etched into his face. "Ms. Reyes," he said, his voice clipped and formal. "This is the third time this month. I know, I'm sorry, there was a situation at the bus stop. He finished for her, surprising her. I've already heard. Anya stared at him, confused. You've heard? He held up his phone, showing a social media page. On the screen was a slightly blurry photo of Anya at the piano. Her eyes closed, her hands spread across the keys. The caption read, Mystery pianist at Cedar Street bus stop this morning. Amazing performance. Anyone know who she is? Hidden talent, busking, classical music. This is you, isn't it? Mr. Patterson asked. Anya nodded slowly, unsure what to say. How had the photo spread so quickly? It had been less than an hour since her impromptu performance. My daughter saw it on her feed and recognized the building in the background. She knows I manage this place. He studied Anya with new eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. She plays piano too. Asked me if I knew we had a legit concert pianist on our cleaning staff. Anya felt her cheeks grow warm. I'm not really a concert. Doesn't matter. Mr. Patterson cut in, his tone softening slightly. Point is, you're late again. He sighed heavily. Company policy is clear. 3 strikes and you're out. And there it was. The consequence she'd known was coming the moment she'd decided to stay at the bus stop. Strangely, she felt almost calm about it. The panic she would have expected about bills, rent, finding a new job, was there but muted, overshadowed by the lingering sense of rightness she'd felt while playing. I understand, she said quietly. Mr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. Look, my hands are tied here. I have to let you go, but... He hesitated, then held out a business card. My brother-in-law runs a music store downtown. They're looking for someone to teach beginner piano lessons a few evenings a week. Not full-time, but, he shrugged, might be more your speed than scrubbing toilets. Anya took the card, her second of the day, with a sense of wonder. Thank you, she managed to say. You can finish out today, Mr. Patterson added. I'll have your final check ready tomorrow. As he walked away, Anya stood there holding the 2 business cards. Small rectangles of possibility she hadn't possessed this morning. She tucked them carefully into her pocket and went to get her cleaning cart. One more day of this job, one more day of the life she'd been living. Then what? By lunchtime, Anya's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She rarely got notifications, just the occasional text from her landlady or a call from the pharmacy about her grandmother's old prescriptions that she kept forgetting to cancel. Now alert after alert flashed across her screen. She had given her number to the woman with the colorful scarf, who had insisted on staying in touch. That woman, Lily was her name, had apparently tagged Anya in the video she'd posted online. From there, it had spread like wildfire. During her lunch break, sitting alone in the building's break room, Anya finally gathered the courage to watch the video. She plugged in her earbuds and pressed play. The quality wasn't great. It had been raining, after all, and Lily had been recording on a phone while holding an umbrella. But the sound came through clearly enough. Anya watched herself get lost in the music, saw the crowd gathering, heard the applause at the end. The video had over 20,000 views already. The comment section was overflowing. Who is this woman? Incredible talent. This made me cry. Beauty in unexpected places. I'm a piano teacher and this is professional level playing. No joke. Anybody know her story? Why is she playing at a bus stop? And there were hundreds more, all expressing variations of the same sentiment. Amazement, curiosity, admiration. Anya put her phone down, her sandwich forgotten. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had just wanted to prove something to herself and maybe to that rude businessman. She hadn't intended to become an internet sensation. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered hesitantly. Hello? Is this Anya? The pianist from the bus stop? The voice was friendly. Professional. Yes, that's me. This is Paula Wong from Channel 5 News. We'd love to interview you for our evening segment on local talents. Your video is going viral and our viewers would love to hear your story. Anya nearly dropped her phone. A news interview? Her? I'm not sure. It would just be a short segment, Paula continued smoothly. 5 minutes tops. We could meet you at the bus stop piano around 4:00. I'm working until 5, Anya said automatically, then remembered. Actually, today is my last day. I just got fired. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Would that be something you'd be comfortable discussing in the interview? The contrast between your obvious talent and your current job situation? It's a compelling human interest story. Anya thought about it. 24 hours ago, she would have said no immediately. She had spent years trying to blend into the background, to not call attention to herself, to accept the life circumstances had dealt her. But something had changed at that piano. Or rather, something had changed inside her. "Okay," she said finally. "I can meet at 5:30. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Anya cleaned offices, wiped down surfaces, and emptied trash cans on autopilot, her mind elsewhere. By the time she clocked out at 5 EU, 3 more journalists had called, and Mrs. Chen had texted to say that the local Chinese-language newspaper wanted to do a feature on her as well. The bus stop looked different in the late afternoon sunshine. The piano sat innocently in its usual spot, as if nothing extraordinary had happened there that morning. But for Anya, everything had changed. A small crowd had already gathered when she arrived. Paula from Channel 5 was there with a cameraman, setting up equipment. A few curious onlookers lingered nearby, whispering and pointing when they recognized Anya from the video. "There she is," Paula said warmly, extending a hand. "Our bus stop virtuoso. Ready for your television debut?" "Not really," Anya admitted with a nervous laugh. "I've never done anything like this." "Just be yourself," Paula advised. "Tell your story, and maybe play something for us at the end." The interview itself passed in a blur of lights and questions. Anya found herself talking about things she hadn't discussed in years. Her grandmother's sacrifices, her scholarship to the conservatory, the choice she'd had to make when family illness and financial problems hit. "So you gave up a promising music career to care for your grandmother?" Paula asked, her expression sympathetic. "It wasn't really a choice," Anya explained. "She had raised me after my parents died. She'd worked 3 jobs to pay for my first piano lessons. When she got sick," she shrugged, "you do what you have to do for family. And now, your video has over 50,000 views and counting. There's a hashtag trending locally. Bus stop pianist. What happens next for you?" It was a question Anya had been asking herself all day. "I'm not sure," she said honestly. "I lost my cleaning job because I was late this morning after staying to play. But maybe—" She touched the business cards in her pocket. "Maybe it's time to find my way back to music. Would you play something for our viewers?" Paula asked. Anya nodded and moved to the piano. This time there was no nervousness, no hesitation. She chose a piece her grandmother had particularly loved, Debussy's Clair de Lune, gentle and evocative. As she played, she was aware of the camera, the small crowd, the passing traffic, but none of it mattered. There was only the music, as there had always been. When she finished, Paula was wiping away a tear. "Beautiful," she said quietly, then remembered she was on camera and turned professional again. That was Anya Reyes, our very own bus stop pianist. A reminder that extraordinary talent can be found in the most ordinary places. "Back to you, Tom." The cameraman lowered his equipment. "We're clear." That was perfect. "This will air at 6 to our wire and again at 10 to." Anya sat still at the piano, feeling strangely calm despite the whirlwind her life had become. A young girl approached shyly, holding out a notepad and pen. "Could I have your autograph?" she asked. "I'm learning piano too, an autograph." Like she was someone important, someone worth remembering. Anya smiled and took the notepad. "What's your name?" "Zoe. I've been playing for 2 years, but it's really hard." "It is hard," Anya agreed as she signed her name. "But that's what makes it worth doing." She handed the notepad back. "Keep practicing, Zoe, promise?" The girl nodded solemnly, clutching the autograph like a treasure. As the crowd began to disperse, Anya's phone rang again. This time it was Lily, the woman who had posted the original video. "Anya, have you checked your phone in the last hour? The video just got shared by Classical FM. It's going international." Anya looked down at the bus stop piano with its slightly chipped keys and Music for Everyone sign. She thought about the businessman who had laughed at her, about Mr. Patterson who had fired her, about her grandmother who had believed in her even when she'd stopped believing in herself. One moment of courage had changed everything. One decision to stop hiding and start playing again. What happens now? Lily asked excitedly. Anya ran her fingers lightly over the piano keys, feeling like she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Now," she said softly, "we see what tomorrow brings." 6 months had passed since that rainy morning at the bus stop. Autumn had given way to winter, and winter had gradually softened into spring. The cherry trees along Cedar Street were beginning to bloom. their pale pink petals occasionally drifting down to land on the keys of the bus stop piano. Anya adjusted her scarf against the morning chill as she walked toward that same piano. She no longer needed to catch the number 42 bus for work, but she still visited this spot at least once a week. It had become something of a ritual. The bus stop pianist video, as it had come to be known online, had indeed gone viral, just as Lily had predicted. After the local news segment aired, national outlets had picked up the story. By the end of that first week, Anya had appeared on 2 morning shows and had been interviewed by journalists from as far away as Japan and Brazil. But unlike many viral sensations that burned bright and quickly faded, Anya's story had resonated in a lasting way. Perhaps it was the contrast between her humble circumstances and extraordinary talent. Perhaps it was the genuine emotion that came through in her playing. Or perhaps it was simply that people needed to believe that second chances were possible, that it was never too late to reclaim a forgotten dream. Whatever the reason, Anya's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined that rainy morning when she decided to stand up to the rude businessman. She approached the piano now, running her fingers lightly over the brass plaque that had been affixed to it 3 months ago. "Music awakens the soul," it read. "Play freely." Below was a smaller line of text, inspired by Anya Reyes, the bus stop pianist. The city had installed similar pianos at 5 other bus stops across town, each with the same invitation to play. Anya had been asked to perform at all the dedication ceremonies, her face flushing with embarrassment and pride each time officials praised her for revitalizing public music in our community. She sat down on the bench, set her coffee cup beside her, and began to play a gentle prelude by Chopin. It was early enough that the morning commute hadn't fully started, so she had the bus stop mostly to herself. This was how she liked it best, just her and the piano in the quiet morning light. As she played, she thought about all that had happened in these past 6 months. The music store job that Mr. Patterson's brother-in-law had offered had been just the beginning. After her story went viral, the community music school, where the older gentleman had given her his card, had invited her to join their teaching staff. Now she taught piano 3 days a week to students ranging from 5-year-old beginners to retirees finally pursuing long-deferred interests. The other 2 weekdays she performed at a small cafe downtown during lunch hours. Weekends were for her own practice and for the community music program. She'd started with some of her viral video proceeds, bringing keyboards and instruction to neighborhoods where music education had been cut from schools. It wasn't a life of concert halls and international tours. It wasn't the future her professors at the conservatory had once predicted for her, but it was a life filled with music, with purpose and with a joy she had almost forgotten existed. "I thought I might find you here." Anya's hands stilled on the keys as she recognized the voice. She turned to see the businessman from that rainy morning, the one whose mockery had sparked her act of defiance. He looked different somehow. The expensive suit and air of superiority were gone, replaced by casual clothes and an expression that seemed almost humble. "You're him," she said simply. "From that day." He nodded, his gaze dropping to his shoes for a moment before meeting her eyes again. "I am. My name is David Chen, and I owe you an apology." Anya studied him carefully. She had thought about this man often over the past months, not with anger, surprisingly, but with a kind of gratitude. If he hadn't laughed at her, would she have found the courage to play the way she did? Would her life have changed so dramatically? "You don't owe me anything," she said. "In a strange way, I should thank you." He looked surprised. "Thank me? For behaving like a complete jerk?" Anya smiled slightly. "Sometimes we need someone to doubt us before we remember how to believe in ourselves." David shifted uncomfortably. "Still, I've wanted to apologize for months. I saw your interviews, read the articles. I even went to hear you play at Rosie's Cafe last month, but I couldn't work up the nerve to approach you." He gestured to the piano. "You're extraordinary. I was wrong and small-minded, and I'm sorry." "Apology accepted," Anya said, and meant it. There was no room in her new life for holding on to old resentments. David seemed relieved. "My daughter plays, you know. She's 12. When she saw your video, she recognized me in the background, one of the people laughing. She was so disappointed in me." He smiled ruefully. She's the one who insisted I find you and apologize. She also wants piano lessons, but only from the bus stop lady. Anya laughed. I have a few openings in my Tuesday afternoon class. Bring her by the community music school if she's serious. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Chen, who was carrying a small package. I thought that was you playing, she said warmly to Anya, then noticed David. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I know you. David had the grace to look embarrassed. Yes, ma'am. I was just apologizing to Anya for my behavior that day. Mrs. Chen's expression softened marginally. Good. It's never too late to admit when we're wrong. She turned to Anya and held out the package. These came in fresh this morning. I thought you might like some for your students, Anya. Opened the package to find almond cookies still, warm from the oven. Mrs. Chen had begun supplying treats for Anya's community music classes after attending one session and declaring that music requires sustenance. They'll love these. Thank you, Anya said, giving the older woman a quick hug. More people were arriving at the bus stop now, most of them regulars who smiled and waved at Anya. Some took pictures or videos with their phones even 6 months later. Visitors still came hoping to catch the bus stop pianist in action. David checked his watch. I should go. My bus will be here soon. He hesitated. Would you play something before I go? For old time's sake? Anya nodded and turned back to the piano. Her fingers found the keys, and the opening notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the air. The same piece she had played on that life-changing morning. But this time there was no anger driving her, no need to prove anything. She played simply for the joy of making music in the morning sunlight. When she finished, David and the other waiting commuters applauded enthusiastically. The bus pulled up, its doors opening with a hydraulic sigh. Tuesday afternoons, Anya reminded David as he moved toward the bus. For your daughter, he nodded. We'll be there and thank you. As the bus pulled away, Lily arrived, her colorful scarf bright against the spring morning. She was carrying a large envelope. Perfect timing, she said, sitting down beside Anya on the piano bench. I just picked up the final designs. She opened the envelope and pulled out a glossy brochure. What do you think? The brochure featured a photo of Anya at the piano, surrounded by children of various ages. Across the top were the words, Music for Everyone, the Anya Reyes Community Piano Project. Lily had turned out to be not just the person who had posted the viral video, but also a grant writer for a local arts foundation. She had helped Anya channel her unexpected fame into something meaningful, a non-profit program that placed pianos in community centers, homeless shelters and senior homes along with regular instruction. It's perfect, Anya said, tracing her finger over the faces of her students in the photo. I still can't believe this is real sometimes. Believe it, Lily said firmly. You're changing lives, Anya. Not just with viral videos, but every day, one note at a time. Another bus approached and Lily gathered her things. That's me. Board meeting this morning to approve the summer program budget. She gave Anya a quick hug. See you this afternoon at the shelter? Anya nodded. I'll be there. As Lily boarded the bus, a young woman hesitantly approached the piano, a small child in tow. Excuse me, she said. Are you really her? The piano lady from the internet? Anya smiled. She was still getting used to being recognized. Yes, that's me. My son loves your videos. He's been begging for piano lessons ever since he saw you play. The woman nudged the boy forward. Go ahead, Tyler. Ask her. The child, no more than 6, looked up at Anya with solemn eyes. Can you teach me to play like you? Anya moved over on the bench and patted the space beside her. Why don't we start right now? Just a quick lesson before my bus comes. As the child sat beside her, his small fingers tentatively pressing the keys under her guidance, Anya felt that familiar surge of certainty. This, helping others find their own music, was exactly where she was meant to be. She thought about how a single moment of courage at a rainy bus stop had changed everything. How one decision to stop hiding her talent had opened doors she'd thought were closed forever. How music, once lost, had found its way back into her life. The morning sunlight caught on the brass plaque. Music awakens the soul. Play freely. And that's exactly what Anya planned to do for the rest of her life.